Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Business Insights room. Every Thursday, Tim Sullivan and I, Maya Matsuoka, lead a discussion looking for insights, developments, and new opportunities for the business in Japan. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region.
Today's special is, once again, Maya, your host, and Tim, your co-host of Thursday morning Clubhouse.
Yes. So welcome to everybody who joined us just now. I hope that more people will join us in a while. It's Children's Day here in Japan.
Yes, it is.
We are in the middle of the Golden Week, the spring long holiday season, is it?
Yes.
Yes. And so everybody's out and about. The other day we came back from the countryside. It was packed with people, and it was so good to see that people are enjoying outdoor activities, enjoying going about their business and just having fun too.
Yes.
And at that point, I also thought that it's really fascinating to see how everybody is wearing the mask, but under the mask, everybody is so different.
They're wearing masks outside. They're wearing them on motorbikes. They're wearing them inside cars. It's become part of, but I want to echo what you said, Maya. Like, I've been coming to Atami since the mid or even the early 80s, okay? So I've been here a lot, and I have never seen this many people in Atami before, nor has my wife, who was born and raised here. And it's almost like all this pent-up frustration is exploding because everybody, and I mean that in a good way, everybody is wanting to just do something, enjoy, be with other people, go to a nice place, and kind of forget about this, the last 2 years, right? Of not lockdowns technically, but still all these restrictions, right? So that, I actually have some pictures. I have to share them, but it's just amazing. But it's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing, and it was really good. It felt very good to walk around and be with so many people outside, because even though we didn't have strict lockdowns here in Japan, the states of emergency still kept people indoors, and everybody refrained from traveling or just having fun. So it was really nice to be out there.
It was nice, and I still found some humor in the situation. I was telling you, Maya, yesterday, I think, when we spoke. So we have this kind of route we always take. We take a walk around town. It's like maybe 4 kilometers. We try to do it every day, certainly on nice days. So we go down. We always end up going down to the harbor, right? Because
Yes.
It's it's a boardwalk, right? Basically, you got that walkway along the coast that takes you down to Sun Beach, right? And then we loop around. Depending, we take different routes, right? So everything. There's another section, closer to the mountain, on the other side of a stage area. It's all open, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But it's connected to the boardwalk. So that's open, and so there's a stage, and they got, they have live music now because they're doing the beer festival here in Atami. And again, it was packed with people. So we're walking through that area just to go to the boardwalk to keep going with our walk. There's a guy out there taking people's temperature. This is all outside. He's like, I don't even think the temperature thing would work. Like, if I were running, would I be hotter and would I not be able to get in, or cooler because the air's cooling you off a little bit, right? It was really weird. And even my Japanese wife is like, really? Like, we're all outside, like what's that going to do? And after we talked about it, we just guessed, and maybe somebody in the audience might have a good answer. I almost think, like, for them to get the permit to do the festival this year, they maybe had to promise to try to control COVID. And so that was their tatemai way of saying, yeah, we're doing something. I don't know. I've tried to make sense of it.
Yeah, there are guidelines traveling within Japan. Also, there are guidelines which have been put together, for traveling overseas too. And the guidelines basically are they have been put together in order to prevent infection with COVID. So all these things, the measure, the temperature taking, also the social distancing, mask wearing in in places, it doesn't matter whether it's outdoors or indoors, but places where people gather. So they're part of the guidelines. So that's, I believe, all the facilities that accept customers, tourists as well here, they have to observe the guidelines and follow them so that, they don't get chastised by the authorities for not doing that. And yeah, yesterday we went to Ueno. We wanted to go to one of the museums there. And when we got there, we noticed that, actually, we needed a reservation to enter. Of course, we were not aware of that, so we couldn't enter the museum. But that's what happened. And again, we needed a reservation. We needed, to have a strip of paper, I believe, with our temperature written on it. And also we had to leave our phone numbers so that in case there was an infection, within on the premises of the museum, they could trace us and so on and so on. So, of course, yesterday we made a reservation for another day. And again, these are all parts of the guidelines for safe movement here. And it looks, I don't know, just the other day also I talked with my sister-in-law back home in Bulgaria, and she wrote to me that in Europe, so Bulgaria, of course, being part of Europe, it's the same. They have abandoned all the guidelines, so there are no restrictions for travel anywhere, and they don't need the vaccine certificates anymore. So people are free to move around. And I wonder, maybe we'll get to that point in maybe not a couple of months, but in several months too. Because I believe that all the countries here, Japan included, all the countries in Asia are actually eager to open and to start kickstart their economies. But let's see what happens, who knows? And we're talking about diversity, right? Okay, maybe Tim is busy now helping.
No, I'm back.
Okay.
No, I'm not helping. Not yet. I had technical difficulties. My apologies. For whatever reason, I get these weird noises here. So yes. Anyway, we're talking about diversity, and it kind of came out of the Unplanned Japan podcast we did, and it's kind of like we stumbled onto it, like we do everything when we do that. And so I started thinking about it because I think there is an image abroad. I certainly was guilty of it before I moved here many, many years ago. That Japan, I had this image of Japan that wasn't at all close to reality, and in many ways, it was loaded up with stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about diversity, people often say, Japan's not diverse. And, I guess it's all relative. So I guess I would start the discussion by first saying we have to think of different societies as a bell curve. There's a distribution across a bell curve, right?
Yes.
And there are different levels of, some are tight and some are wide and flat, right? So America, because of our diversity, our history, so many different things, we're wide and flat. And we have people all over the map in our country as part of individualism, and there's a lot of other cultural factors that feed into that. Relative to America, Japan has a much tighter bell curve. They still have variation, and it's just a different distribution. And so while, some might interpret that as them not being as diverse, it doesn't mean that they're not diverse. It's just all relative, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm sorry. It makes a lot of sense. And as you said, everything is relative.
Right. And then I started thinking about it. I had this weird thought, because this is how my weird mind works. I was thinking, if I could find out the Japanese bell curve of Tatemae, the Tatemae bell curve versus the Honne bell curve, my hypothesis is the Honne bell curve would be much wider and flatter than the Tatemae bell curve. I don't know if that's a useful concept, but it's just kind of this, and I guess another way of saying it is, the more Japanese people that I get to know on a personal and intimate level, and again, some I've known for 40 years, they're close friends and family, the more you realize, you know what, when you get to their Honne, there's a lot of different unique ways of thinking here. And so it's kind of to frame the discussion today, I thought maybe we could share some of our stories, because there's a lot of factors at play. One, everyone's different, right? So when we come here, none of us have the same Japan experience. We deal with different people. We live in different areas. We filter all that through different filters because we come from different backgrounds. So there's diversity of the actual people in Japan, but there's also diversity of our perceptions. And if two people could experience exactly the same thing, they can't, but as a thought experiment, even then they would have different reactions to that same experience, right? So I have my experiences, and the more people I talk to who have lived here longer than me have different perceptions. And many of them love Japan just as much as I do. And then, of course, there's the other extreme of foreigners, non-Japanese, who come here and they hate it. They complain. And they're obviously experiencing a completely different Japan than I am, right? For whatever reason, right? So I think that diversity of experience, I find it really fascinating. And if anyone wants to, join us and share their experiences, I'd love to hear it. And it looks like our friend Yuka-san is on stage. So Yuka, good morning, and please go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm glad that, I can always count on you two to come up with a great topic. And then, and then you haven't disappointed me even once. It's a very timely topic, at least to me, because just the other day, a different, clubhouse room, we were just talking about this. For that room, the main topic was what to be careful about before you decide to, move to Japan. And then there are so many complaints from the non-Japanese folks who have lived in Japan for a meaningful time. But one guy mentioned, though, I thought that was very interesting. He is an American, lived in Japan for at least like 15, 20 years. So, he probably knows Japan maybe better than I do. But he mentioned, a lot of things you can say about Japan. But one thing he have noticed, he said, Japanese are very accepting and open to, whose sexual orientation is different from what has been, accepted traditionally. So, I'm trying to choose the words in a acceptable PC way, but I hope I'm making sense. So, is that your experience too? Like a Japanese are more open to people with non-traditional sexual orientation? Oh, did I keep that party again?
No, you didn't. That's really a great point. Yes, because I think that it has, the answer from me probably has at least two levels. So the first one is, or two angles, if I can say so. The first one is what we see on TV, on popular TV channels and TV shows. I definitely think that, those programs, they're much more open, and they are really open to showing let's say people and celebrities with different sexual orientation, which I believe is very good because it opens the door to the general public, general public's acceptance of non-traditional sexual orientations here. This is the first one. And also from what I have seen in my, let's say, personal life and connections and also work here in Japan, I think that you are right. So people in general, they don't stigmatize those with different sexual orientation. This said, of course, there is always, the casual, that guy is, for example, I hate this word. I'm sorry that I have to use it, but that's what people use here. For example, that guy is Okama. But it is usually said with that sense and the feeling of kind of endearment to a certain extent, and people just accept that and they don't stigmatize the others who have different sexual orientation. And then it's really different from what I have seen in the Western world, at least in my country. I agree with you that, the acceptance here is much, much better when we compare it.
Maya, it's a very good point that you brought that up in the TV show. Yeah. You're talking about like some guy like a Matsuko Deluxe? Is that what his name is?
Yes, and I don't know whether Matsuko is really whether Matsuko has a different sexual orientation, but they present that character as being one with a different orientation. And
right.
Yes, and then everybody watches her, let's say, okay, and everybody's like, she says some good stuff, some of, and so on, which is really telling of how people view these things here. And once again, there isn't there isn't that stigma attached
right
to this.
And then actually I have a follow-up question, but I want to hear Atami-san's opinion about this thing. So
yeah, I think Maya made a good point too. Yeah, it could. How much of it is shibai, right? How much of it is just acting, right? And it doesn't really matter because it's, you know, putting the message out that, hey, you're humanizing somebody, right? And now acceptance is an interesting word because it depends on what you mean by acceptance, right? In terms of, are all these different ways of thinking accepted? I don't want to say no. I don't want to say
you mean superficial acceptance? You mean like you act like you're okay, but in deep down you're not?
Or there's a fine line between acceptance and toleration. You know.
Oh, that's right. Good point.
You know, and certainly what we can say for sure is there is not a hostile attitude toward it. You know what I mean? Like in my country, there are people who are just hostile toward it and angry toward it. You don't see that here. It's like, they're different. And,
you mean U.S.?
Yeah, I'm in the U.S., yes. I see, I see it on both sides. It depends where you're at. What I mean is that it's very polarized. Like the people who are against it are really against it. You know what I mean? About whether it's that, that they could be a super conservative person who believes, men and women only should get married. And there's some people who get angry toward it, is my point. I don't see that here in Japan, ever. Like, I don't see anybody it's not a big deal. Yeah, they're a little different, but they don't make a big deal of it, in my opinion. So that's my experience. And the other thing is, most of my friends are like almost 70 years old, in their 60s and up to 70. And they are like the Japanese. Well, first of all, most of them are artists, which artists kind of lean a certain way, right? They're very open to begin with. So I got that view of Japan but I know it doesn't represent the rest of Japanese society. If anything, it's probably a fringe view. So it's interesting to hear both of you talk about it. But yeah, for what it's worth, that's my perspective.
No, I think, you both made a good point. But then what has been puzzling to me, though, so Japanese, so let's say we agree that, they're very tolerant toward people with the non-traditional sexual orientation. However, that's actually, my personal experience. The people are very tough, or what's the word I'm looking for? But, like when it comes to the people with disabilities, they are not as accepting, as they, I wish they are.
I feel like it's getting better, though. And I might be wrong, and I'm not saying the pace is fast enough, but I compared to the 80s, the 80s, it was terrible. I mean, people hid, though. People who were, disabled people were almost like hidden from public view.
Right, yes.
But I've seen more of it now. I see more wheelchair ramps than I saw back in the 1980s. And again, I left the country and I came back 3 years ago. So some of those changes are more dramatic to me because, my memory is frozen back in the 80s when I lived here, right? So I'm comparing it. And that's so to me, I've seen progress, but there are people much closer to it than I am, including Maya. So if you have a different perspective, I'd like to hear it.
Well, I don't think that my perspective is very different. I would say that, yes, it's similar in the sense that when I came to Japan 20 years ago, there weren't so many people with disabilities out. Like they weren't really going out with their, with the caregivers and members of their families. Nowadays, it's different, and I think that it's anecdotal, right? But it was a couple of months ago, and I and my husband, we were walking around, just going shopping, I think, and then of course, there were, we saw some people in wheelchairs, and my husband said, wow, there are so many people in wheelchairs nowadays. And I thought, well, nowadays is probably not a good expression to use because statistically, everywhere in the world, 10% of the population of the world has some kind of disability. And it doesn't change by country. So that is a steady number, and it has been here for quite a while, which means that basically in the past, we didn't see these people because they didn't go out. There was much more hesitation before than there is now. And now, I believe because a lot of people talk about universal accessibility, And there has been a lot of talk about this in the industry, which I was in, that's travel and tourism, but also other industries as well. So a lot of facilities here in Japan, they have been adjusted or built to accommodate people with disabilities. So it has become much easier, for those people to just find their way around. And that's why they're out and about, and people have become more aware of that. So yeah, I think that well, basically, we can see them. Japan has become more accepting in the sense that, as I said, the infrastructure has been improved so that more people can get out and about without worrying, about their mobility.
Yeah, I was gonna, Yuka, when's the last time you came to Japan?
3 years ago.
Okay, so did you notice any progress when you were here?
Actually, I was with my friend, an American friend, who happened to use the wheelchair. And then, we were at the Tokyo station, and we had such a hard time looking for an elevator. Yeah. So because Tokyo station is just too huge and too crowded, and once you're in the wrong direction, we had such a hard time crossing the, get to the platform. But maybe different now. I don't know. I'm planning to go back to Japan in the October.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that a lot of stations here in Tokyo, they still need improvement in this sense of the word. And as you said, Tokyo Station is really huge. And when it is crowded, especially during rush hours, but not only, I mean, about 3,000 trains go through the station every day. So imagine the number of people going there. That's a lot, yes, every day, right? And they definitely need to make it more to make it friendlier to people with disabilities. But I don't know how, and it's not only Tokyo Station. I think that Shibuya Station is the same. Now it is under construction. Hopefully it will become better. Shinjuku Station is the same. And it does take time to actually work in this direction and get the facilities in better shape. But at the same time, so as I said, compared to 20 years ago, things have become better. Definitely, it doesn't mean that, this is a place where, well, let's say the Tokyo government should stop, and so on. There is so much space for improvement from now on too. But the good thing is that things are moving in the right direction. And I hope that when you come in October, you will notice some improvements too. So
I hope so. By the way, I think I stirred the conversation toward the diversity as in physical and sexual orientation. But I don't know if you are maybe thinking about different kind of diversity, maybe gender diversity or So I don't know what you are thinking about.
No, I mean that fits in the diversity discussion certainly because it's a broad discussion. But it could be diversity of anything: diversity of thought, diversity of language, and this is something I didn't touch on. Looking at it, putting on my cultural anthropologist hat, you look at island cultures and there tends to be more uniformity because many of them historically were isolated and kind of developed their own culture. Japan kind of fits into that, except Japan isn't one island. It's, many islands. And so even right away, you got some diversity right there. But the big thing is, Japan, 70% of the country is covered by mountains, which means there were isolated pockets of communities throughout Japan that didn't have that much contact with other areas. So they created their own dialects. And of course, after the roads were built and transportation, public transportation became, ubiquitous throughout Japan, it changed a little bit, but you still see remnants of the past. We all know Osaka people, they speak differently. There's a, different vibe. How they behave is a little bit different. And by the way, as an American, I love Kansai. I feel like they're a little closer to Americans than, people from Tokyo, for example. And so, all of us, we can see even within Japan, the diversity of language, the diversity of all these little subcultures. And then there's different demographics. That's a different diversity. Again, my friends are all like kind of from the hippy dippy Japanese generation of the 1960s and 70s. So they're much different than even people of the same age who were salarymen who worked for the same company, their entire careers. So right there, diversity. I had to learn to step into all these different subcultures living here. And again, as I mentioned earlier, just the idea of getting to know people on a one-to-one basis. You just see how much diversity of thought there is that often surprised me. So, yes, Yuka, that certainly fits within the discussion.
Wait, did I hear the bird chirping?
Maybe we have lots of birds. I'm out in the country. I'm on the mountainside. So yeah.
No, yeah, no, I thought that was like what is that? Is that a hototogisu? I can't remember. I don't
Yes,
know.
it is. Yes, it is. They're
So
all.
that's the sound of spring, right?
Wow, you're good, man. You have good ears. Yes.
Yeah, and I have horrible eyes. Anyway. So can I ask you something though? I mean, gosh, I'm on the roll. So also we're talking about the religious diversity. I don't know. Does it come to too sensitive here? But Japan, we're kind of open to all kind of beliefs, right? Or faith, or we don't limit our lives to like a one faith. You know, like we always say, like we celebrate Christmas and throw the wedding ceremony in Buddhist temple, and then do something under a different like a religious tradition. So what how do you view that? Is that like do you think we lack some like what is the word, like we should focus on one religion, or it's just sort of like we are lacking some sort of religious seriousness, or how would you view that?
Actually, that's so funny. I'm glad you brought it up, Yuka, because this is my thesis was on death and rakugo. So I studied a lot of Japanese religion and starting obviously with Shinto, how Buddhism was introduced into Japan, how it was Japanized to fit the Japanese way of thinking. There's a great book by Nakamura Hajime called Ways of Thinking of Eastern Peoples. And basically he tracks Buddhism from India throughout Asia and where it ends up in Japan, right? And his overall thesis is the Japanese, well, actually, like the Chinese took this really kind of abstract religious philosophy and kind of made it a little bit more practical. And then the Japanese made it even more practical, and it became more of a this worldly, philosophy that really is a lot different than the original Indian Buddhism form of that. And so I find it fascinating, though, that when Buddhism was introduced, it was kind of introduced because Prince Shotoku was sending scholars to China to study Chinese culture so Japan could learn from it. And Japan was way behind, even the Western world. And so China was kind of like at the top of the hierarchy of culture development at the time. And so Shotoku, and also the other thing is Shotoku liked Confucianism because it was based on the idea of the mandate of heaven, which gave the ruler, this godlike status almost. So it fit his political purposes as well. And Japan gradually brought Buddhism in. It started out with the elites. And during the Muromachi period, you had these traveling priests who spread the word to the then illiterate masses. And it became, and you had the samurai adapt Zen Buddhism, which was very practical, and they could use it, as a mind strategy to improve their swordsmanship. And the idea of the way of whatever, the way of tea, the way of the, we're all familiar with that trope in Japan, right? Well, that's process orientation, which, by the way, has its roots in Chinese Taoism. The way, right? The Tao means Michi. So it evolved and it was given a Japanese flavor. And then really in the Edo period, religion was taken less seriously, but it was more, how would I put it? Baked into the culture at the value level, but not necessarily practiced, right? And I think the theme that comes up and up again is how practical and this worldly Japanese people are. And a lot of those roots are in Shinto and nature worship, things of this world. So that's how I looked at it. And the joke in Japan is you're born into Shinto, you get married a Christian, and you die a Buddhist. So it kind of shows that practical angle that Japanese brought in religions because it suited their purposes. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're saying though, so I thought that sometimes we lack some consistency. You said
yeah, for sure.
It can be. It's a practicality that's good, but and I was just thinking because we're just talking about the other day also about why Japan hasn't have any religious war. So
actually, I think, and maybe somebody can Google this and check it, but I'm pretty sure that there were different Buddhist sects that were battling each other. They were both Buddhists, but they were different sects, which meant they were less tied to an ideology, and they were more tied to a leader or a figure or a clan, or you know what I mean, or a group.
Not like political?
Oh, well, no, my monastery against your monastery. Maybe somebody can check it, but I just recall a long time ago reading something about that. But you're right. I mean, I don't think they started any like foreign wars based on religious belief. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Right, but we're just thinking about, like, I'm sorry, Maya, like, like in India, Hindu people fight against, what is the other religion that they're fighting against? But anyway, those things had not happened in Japan, so I was just wondering why that was. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Maya.
Oh, I cannot answer your question why that happened, but I wanted to chime in and say that, as you said, probably, some people may perceive this as lack of consistency, but at the same time, it's interesting to see how, well, that lack of consistency does not really make things look inconsistent. And I think because of the society, how society is formed here, because it is really tightly knit, the communities, let's say, and then the society itself, that even though there is not just one consistent belief, in, let's say, only Shinto or only Buddhism or let's say, Christianity, it still doesn't make people, look very different from other, let's say, communities in Western or other Asian countries, because at the end of the day, there is that consistency in behavior, which is based on practicality, as you said. And then, of course, in Japan, it is also a very big part of it is the common good, not the individual good, it's the common good. So people, even though there isn't just one religious belief or one religious system, there is another system which makes up for this lack of, let's say, one line, which everybody follows in terms of religion. So I really don't think that there is anything bad about it. And what I like about it here, about being in Japan, one of the things I like about being in Japan is actually this diversity of religious beliefs as well. So you can be, just follow any religion you want, as long as you behave well and don't harm the people around you. Always fine. You're free to do it, to follow it. And what can be better than this? That's what, even though there is, some people may argue that there is this lid on top of everything, just below it, there is a lot of diversity here, and it's the same in terms of religion and religious beliefs as well. Tim, sorry, I think that I cut you in.
No, that's great. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to add, and a lot of people don't know this, even Japanese, okay? When Buddhism was introduced, I think this is based on the Japanese love of harmony. Rather than pitting two religions against each other, they harmonized them.
Yeah.
They accommodated them. And what happened, it was actually a process, and they didn't have a word for it, but it was eventually given a word. And the word was called Shimbutsu Shugo, which was Shinto and Buddhism were combined. They were all gods, right? If you are a polytheistic religion, it means if you believe in just one God, which is monotheism, then if you try to introduce a new God, there's going to be fighting going on, because you're going to say, wait a minute, our God's the right one and yours isn't. But if you're polytheistic, it's like, hey, the more gods, the merrier, bring it on in. And so Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples, just go to Kyoto, you see them built on the same premises. And the Japanese eventually didn't know there was a difference between Shinto and Buddhism. It was all practiced as one religion that was united. And it was only separated during the Meiji Restoration, where they, at least principle, wanted to restore the emperor, back to his rightful place. And Buddhism was considered something foreign, and Shinto was the religion that would justify doing it. So the religions were separated, and the Buddhists had a lot of power, but it was meant to weaken. And so that's when the concept of Buddhism and Shinto being two separate religions really came into the Japanese psyche, because it had been merged into one. I can't imagine a Christian church and a mosque, practicing both religions together. And I'm guessing some of it has to do with monotheism.
In Japan, what's the saying? Like Yorozu no Kami? Wait, I'm not saying it right. But like I thought that the meaning is, in Japan there are 800 gods. I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right, but 800 sounds too many. But I got the gist of what you said, Atami-san.
Yeah, I just find Japanese religion fascinating, and I think it's fascinating to compare the two. And yeah, religion is sensitive, but I think if you approach it, more from an anthropology standpoint, I think it's very. In fact, you need it to understand the roots of culture, right?
Yes. Well, it's fascinating to think about this and what you just said, that if you have a look at religion, probably you can understand the roots of modern culture in particular, but not only. And yeah, I remember that when I was back in university, and we had this subject about folklore and religion. So at that point, it was fascinating to see how much in common we have as human beings. And not only, I mean, at that point, of course, we learned about Christianity as well, but not only. And it turns out that as humans, our brain has limitations, and our brain moves, or our perceptions, they actually are formed in a similar way, regardless of religion. And at the end of the day, this comes, these perceptions, they are put into words, into stories. And when you look at different religions, they depict, or their stories, the mythology as well, depict more or less the same feelings, the same way of dealing with things. So I can see, Tim, I saw you sent me a link, and thank you for that. But unfortunately, I cannot open it. So if you can share it directly in the chat room, the room chat, please do that. I don't know why my software acts strangely recently. I cannot share it. I cannot open the link. But I can see also that Amy, she shared 2 links. One of them is about Shinbutsu Shugo, and then the next one, Haibutsu Kishaku. Thank you for doing that, Amy. So if you have time, everybody who is in the room, please go to the links and have a read about these 2.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I sent you the wrong link. This one should work.
Okay, then I'll share it here.
And this basically is an article I wrote a while back, and it just talks about the religious traditions and how they all kind of work together. At least my view of it. So anybody who's interested in that, go ahead and when Maya can upload it, you can click on that.
Tim, you just mentioned that you can imagine, like a Christian worshiping right next to the Islamic people. But then I was just thinking, though, don't they have a blue mosque, a blue church in Istanbul? They have built a mosque right over a Christian church, or vice versa.
I don't know what that means, but that's interesting.
Yes, they did. Right? Yes, basically in Europe, from antiquity, what every new religion did was to build its shrines and temples on top of the shrines and temples of the previous one. So yes, the Blue Mosque.
Fascinating. That's so fascinating.
And you can see those, these proofs everywhere in Europe, actually. So yes, in Istanbul, the Blue Mosque, it was built upon a church, and then now it is a mosque. Also at home in Bulgaria, we have in the very center of the capital, Sofia, we have the same thing. So first it was it was a pagan shrine. Then it was when Christianity actually spread through the Balkan Peninsula, they built a church there, which then was overlaid. It was changed into a mosque.
So why do they do that? Just to show who is in power? It's
that's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, but there are different reasons for that, I believe. Once a place is consecrated, right, when it is made sacred, I believe that it's much easier for the new religion to just follow that in those steps. And then another reason is that every new religion, actually, in order to be accepted by by the population, it needs to adjust to the previous one. So I can talk about how Christianity was accepted in the Balkan Peninsula. Basically, it was before Christianity spread there were polytheistic beliefs, that animalism and so on and so on. And then people, they moved, they followed rites and rituals based on the seasons. there, of course. And then in order to be accepted by those tribes, and communities there, Christianity had to incorporate some of the rites and beliefs of the paganism and then those polytheistic religions beliefs, right? So that's how we got, Easter. That's how we got other spring holidays. That's how we got also Christmas and so on. And if you look back, actually back home, there are so many remnants of polytheistic beliefs, even in the Christian rites there, and also the Easter rites and everything. That's how it happened. So because there was a lot of resistance, of course, when the leaders at that point, the Tsars and also the Khans, when they decided to accept Christianity, there was a lot of resistance, in the different tribes and parts of the Balkan Peninsula. So in order to be able to smoothen that process, they had to incorporate some of the pagan rituals. And of course, they also once, one of the ways to do that was also to to appropriate the consecrated sites of the previous religion, and the temples and the shrines, and turn them into Christian churches. That's how it is. I don't know, Tim, you may have something else to add. But
No, I'm enjoying what you're saying. I learned a lot. I'm not as obviously versed in European culture as you are at all. Actually, I'm not. But no, I think that's fascinating, and it's what for whatever reason that is just an interesting phenomenon, culturally speaking, right? One replaces the other rather than one harmonizing with the other, right?
Yes, in Europe, yeah. Yes, I don't know. Yes, you can see that everywhere, especially in places of Europe which were invaded by the Turkey. Well, that's the Ottoman Empire, and that were ruled by the Ottoman Empire between the 12th and the 18th centuries. It happened a lot, of course. But that's how it is. And my point was that even though, as you say, yes, here in Japan, so different religious beliefs are harmonized, right? And in Europe, they were just appropriated by the next, let's say, religion in power. But still, my point was that at the end of the day, we all have the same or very similar stories to tell, because we're all humans. And many of the stories actually, they follow the same plot, let's say. We have the antagonist, the main character, and so on and so on. And at the end of the day, there is a solution to a problem. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in that, I mean, Joseph Campbell was the pioneer of, myths, and some of what are the universal myths and stories that all cultures share, and what does that say about our common humanity and just us as human beings? What does that mean? So Joseph Campbell, highly recommended. He was like must reading when I was in college.
Okay, Actually, I like to sort of add a different color to the religious diversity in Japan. And then again, this can be very controversial, and I usually don't share this, but I just have to throw this, even though replay is on anyway. So some people say, Japanese, there's so many religions can coexist in Japan because religious belief is superseded by Japanese faith in emperors. And then I was just thinking, but then that's kind of funny, because in England, monarchy has a lot of power too, right? Maybe more power than, Japanese emperors, because Japanese emperors, so-called symbolism, but they never lead country. So do you, or what is your view of this about this emperor system in Japan? Is that unique to Japan, or?
Well, every country is unique, in that sense. So, one of the interesting things about attitudes toward the emperor is, even though the emperor doesn't have any political power and really never did, there was, the religious connotation that, he was a living God. And even if it's not believed literally today, you still see that same reverence. Like, nobody in the media will ever, criticize the emperor or make fun of him. They'll make fun of Buddhist precepts. I've seen lots of comedy. Just look at Rakugo. Rakugo makes fun of Buddhist concepts all the time. But nobody makes fun of the emperor. So the emperor, in a sense, is this like sacred cow that, it's the unspoken messages that you cannot be disrespectful toward the emperor. So I'm not sure what that means, other than it's the level of respect the emperor gets has nothing to do with how much power or no power the emperor has politically. Like, it's not connected, apparently, right?
No, I'm going to ask you, and then you don't have to answer. Do you think that respect is justifiable?
That's not for me to say.
Okay, yeah.
No. I mean, I just, out of respect for the Japanese, let me put it this way. I know Japanese people who have different opinions on it. Okay, and including my late father-in-law. But they still wouldn't voice those opinions publicly ever. So again, it goes back to the diversity of the Honan.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry that again, Tim, I have not, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
No, I'm not, because you didn't put me on the spot, because I just said, no, I'm not going to comment, which is okay. To me, it's out of respect for the culture. It's not my country, right? And so I see myself as a guest here, and I don't think my opinions matter in this context. Those opinions are for Japanese people to have, right? And just one other quick thing. You mentioned that there's this inconsistency in Japan, and I think there is certainly a cultural tendency in terms of, how would I say, Western religion in general has these universal concepts of, like the Ten Commandments, right? This law is eternal. You should all follow it. Doesn't mean we all follow it, but that's the ideal in the West, right? Japan has a different framework. The framework is more Confucian, and morality shifts depending on the situation. In situation A, here's the proper way to behave, and in situation B, here's the proper way to behave. And sometimes there are trade-offs, and you have to pick one over the other. And so outside people might look at that as being inconsistent. The other thing I would say is, I don't know if any religion in the world is consistent. I can read holy books in different religions and find inconsistency. So I don't know but I understand what you're saying. Like, the idea of maybe a belief in a universal concept is that what you meant by consistency?
I just mean like inconsistent meaning, like, seems like we're picking, because I consider myself a Japanese. We pick whatever religion which is best serve us at that moment.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. Like, rather than fighting, just make it all work. And again, maybe it's the practical side of the Japanese.
By the way, Tim, you just mentioned something that which I thought, So I'm sorry. I'm going on the tangent, but you said you are a guest in Japan.
Culturally speaking, because I'm not a Japanese citizen. All right.
Regardless your citizenship status.
Yeah. No. In my mind, that's how I approach it. I feel like I'm an ambassador. I feel like the onus is on me to accommodate my host culture as best I can, and still be authentic. I just maybe it's just my mentality. I'm not saying everybody should think this way. Okay. I'm just saying this is how I think. And I will, sacrifice certain whims and desires to conform and to make my Japanese hosts and family and people around me comfortable. Right. So, for example, I don't wear my mask outside ever, but I shouldn't say ever. But when I come toward a crowd of Japanese people and they're all wearing their masks, I put mine on. Not because and we're outside, right? Not because I think I should do it, but I should do it because I'm trying to accommodate them. I'm trying to show respect for them, and I want them to be comfortable. If I'm walking on the sidewalk and there's only enough room for one person, I will step into the street and this is all unconscious behavior that I've thought of, right? So that's my attitude. And I think the Japanese, we talk about toleration, they have been very tolerant and accommodating of me over the last 44 years, especially back then when I was clueless and broke all the rules without knowing them. So I'm grateful to be here, and gratitude makes you happy. That's the secret.
Interesting. Maya?
Yes. Well, I just want to second everything that Tim said. It's like, yeah, I mean, sorry, it's very trivial already now, but I mean, following the rules established here is great, and it gives you peace of mind as well. It also keeps you on good terms with the locals, which is at the end of the day, this makes your life enjoyable and easy too. But yeah, just sorry, I was reading also about something which Scott Silver wrote in the room chat. So Scott, I invite you to come up on stage if you can, but if you cannot speak, that's okay too. So Scott wrote. I read his comments here. When I taught junior high school students in Osaka.
Oh, Maya, he's up here.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for coming up, Scott. Yes, okay. Maybe you can tell us about your experience in Osaka and when you taught the junior high school students there.
Yeah, can you all hear me here? Or,
yes.
I'm on Bluetooth, so I want to make sure it's working. But so I had taught like many years ago. I was in JET. I was in Osaka Fu. I was in Ibaraki and Takatsuki, and I taught. And so each semester I changed schools. But one semester I was prompted. They said that you're going to a Dowa Kyoiku school, and they explained the whole circumstance. And it was a school in I guess a Barakumin section of Osaka Fu, or in this case Ibaraki, and there was just and I never knew that. I went to Japan thinking, well, I mean, it's 95% Japanese. There's there's no diversity, or I just I didn't know. And so from that experience, I mean, it was probably the most memorable experience of like teaching at that time, and just learning about that and what the Japanese government was doing in the late 90s. To make things better, and again, I'm just speaking. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terms, but and I'm no expert in this, but to me, that was a diversity or a hidden diversity experience that I still carry. Yes, Scott, I'm done.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's. Thank you for sharing it. Yes, and well, it was your experience of some time ago, but just it made me think about how a lot of daycare centers for kids nowadays, how they approach the education of young kids here. And I know that some people may disagree with me, and definitely I have a couple of friends here who are local, and of course they sent their kids to a different kindergarten, so they were not very happy with that, what their daughter got as education there. But the basically there is I can see that there is a lot of effort nowadays here, especially in kindergartens and also elementary schools, to nurture that individuality in children. So when my daughter actually started going to kindergarten, and she was at the age of 3, I think, yes, and the principle which that particular kindergarten followed was, to let every child actually learn at their own pace, also learn what they want to learn, and not force, a pattern of learning on everybody who was in that class. And of course, it was fascinating to me to see, because I also thought until that moment that there was just one pattern, and they were trying to teach kids, all the same things. And that was in kindergarten. Now my daughter is already in elementary school, and I can see the same effort going on here as well. So that, of course, there are certain, let's say, rules and regulations which they teach the kids to follow in the school. But when it comes to individual development and individual learning, there is so much effort there to have every kid, go and follow their own pace, which is fascinating. I mean, it's something very different from what I hear, as a stereotype or an understanding, of many foreigners who live here in Japan. But of course, I invite people who are in the audience and who have kids in school studying here in Japan to share their experiences as well. But this is my observation at the moment, just that, maybe it's something, another part, of Japan's hidden.
Yeah, that would be great, Maya, because I have heard that some kids are bullied in Japan because they look different. And I know we're running out of time, but I'm very concerned about that. So if we can talk about that, and then what's causing that, or maybe there's something that we can do about that, I'm all ears. So maybe, I know this could be very sensitive and very difficult. So, maybe we can talk about this some other time. But diversity in the school, I like to learn about more about that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating topic, and we can probably talk about this, more. at that another time. Just one thing which I want to share is it's fascinating too, because I was worried about that. My daughter is well, she comes from an international marriage. My husband is Japanese, I'm Bulgarian, and I was worried that she might be bullied in school too. But a funny thing happened just at the end of March, when there was there was a gathering, and so all the kids actually, they had to perform in front of the parents, and so on and so on. And then after they finished the performance, it was outside, of course, because of COVID prevention measures and so on and so on. All the kids, they went into their classrooms to change clothes. And then suddenly, while I was waiting in the yard of the school for my daughter to finish and then come out so that we could, go home, I suddenly heard somebody shouting, at the top of their voice, "Mama, Mama!" And first I didn't realize it was my daughter actually. And then I, just stood like, well, I thought it was somebody else. And then she shouted from the second floor of the school, "Mama, it's me! Come, look at me!" And then when I looked up, she was surrounded. She was at the window, of course, the open window. And then she was surrounded by her friends. And she was like, "Look, this is my mom there." And then all the girls around there, they were like, "Wow, she has, blue eyes." And they could see my blue eyes, of course, from the second floor of the school. I don't know how they did that, but anyway. And then after I waved at them, and smiled and so on, they came out running. And all the girls, they came to me and were like, "Oh, can I touch your hair? Oh, you're so cute." And I was like, "Oh, give me a break," But anyway, of course, I played along. So one thing, the point of this is that my daughter was not ashamed. She was not afraid, to just say, "Look at my mother. She's a foreigner."
That's a beautiful story. Probably a good note to end on, and uplifting.
Yeah.
You at progress, I think.
Yeah, and and Maya didn't forget that people call her cute. Just kidding.
It was so funny to me because it's usually, because, sorry, I mean, it's us adults who call little girls cute, right? We call them, "Oh, how cute you are, and I love your hair, and I love your, ponytails," and so on and so on.
I'm just pulling your legs, Maya. That was a beautiful story.
Yes, but I thought, that, well, of course, this is just one school, okay? And I'm not saying that this is the case everywhere in Japan, and I believe that there are a lot of cases of bullying still. But I want to say that efforts are being made. And even though not everywhere, that awareness is growing. The awareness of foreign people having Japanese kids, right, is growing. And then I can say that, especially in the school which my daughter attends, in the school, they're doing their best to actually not create any biases. I thought at that point, when that happened to me, I thought that I was very grateful to the teachers there, because it's the teachers who are with the kids all the time. And I thought that they had done their job really very well. And once again, I believe that there are cases of bullying in other schools, probably other parts of Japan. But I want to, as you say, to end this room on a positive note and say that, the awareness is growing. And at least, in cities, people are becoming more aware of diversity. And when I say diversity, I mean diversity in terms of nationality, so that people are also very accepting here. And I agree that we can and we should probably have a room about school bullying and how we can deal with this and so on. But for the moment, I don't know, Scott, if you have anything to add, because you are in this environment, I believe. I would appreciate it too.
No, thank you so much for inviting me up. No, it was a great room. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank everybody for hanging with us this long, because it's 9:10 and I know a lot of people got to get back to work. And so we held a really great audience today. So thank you very, very much.
Yes.
People are going back to work now after Golden Week?
Oh, wait. No, that's right. I forgot. Thank you. No, you're not. That's why you hung with us. Well, thank you. I
don't know. No, I don't know. Some people may going back to work. I don't know.
Yeah, some people may, but it's the Children's Day today. So happy Children's Day to everybody. And I hope that you have a great day, because we're still in the middle of the Golden Week. It's a beautiful day in Japan. And, well, it's May.
Oh, can I say something? Today is a Star Wars Day. May the Force with you. May the Force be with you in US at least, okay? All right, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just have to throw that in.
Thank you for that, Yuka. Thank you. Yes.
But you have to say force with a Mike Tyson accent, with a lisp.
Okay, you can do that. Okay, well, no, you can do that. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. So, Tim, thank you very much. And Yuka, thank you very much for your great conversation today. We're going to be here again next Thursday at 8 o'clock. So thank you very much, everybody, again. I wish you a great day. Enjoy the rest of the Golden Week, and we're looking forward to having you here again. And don't forget to have a look at our YouTube channel, Unplanned Japan. So for some tips, and a little bit of humor about life in Japan.
Thank you for coming and staying with us today. We will be on air next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and the role of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, you can follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, we're looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you.